I'm going to give them a call just to find out if they're in. If they're not in, I'm probably just going to use the ones that I have already. Make sure that they're sealed up good, got dielectric grease in them to try and keep that issue from not happening. Hey guys, I kind of threw that clip in there in the beginning just to kind of show you where I was with the last shop update. The last shop update is where I kind of announced the death of my wife, and it was kind of an emotional time for me. And I gotta tell you that I really sincerely appreciate all of the comments and the well wishes and everything else that I got from my viewers. Nothing but positive comments about it. There was one comment about didn't understand why I went into such detail about it, and kind of the reason why I did go into such detail about it is because of the condition of my wife. We had been married for 50 years, and it was a struggle. She struggled with health issues, mental health issues, for probably 20, 25 years of those 50 years of marriage. So it's just something that I kind of had to get off of my chest. It's one of those things where you kind of put it off, and a lot of people didn't understand why we had stayed together for so long. It wasn't one of those real loving, caring relationships. It was yeah, it just wasn't one of them, and a lot of people kind of wondered why we had stayed together so long. But anyways, let's try and get over that. I still have some things that need to be done, but let's try and get over it and get back to it. In the beginning of that other video, I had was talking about the lights on the truck and told you that I'd bring you back and show you those connectors. Well, I had filmed that. I just never put it into that shop update. So let's get into that, and we'll kind of expand upon some positive things and some things that we're doing in the shop. This is those bullet connectors that I was talking about. They're the crimp style, and you just plug the male end into that side. There's that kind of pinkish one is one that's put together. But one of the things is if you ever run into these things, they come in different sizes. This is a point 1/8, I think it is. It could be 0.08, but I think it's a 0.18 size bullet connector. So just if you ever do run into it where you get something that has a male part on it or the female part on it, when you go to order the other half of it, you got to make sure it's the right size. Okay, I've got you up in the cab, and in the last couple of clips about the truck, I've talked about putting those 3 lights in the back. What I was going to do is wire them to an interrupter switch. Now, this is the interrupter switch right here, and as you can see, it's a spring-loaded switch so that you depress it and it interrupts the lights. It gives a signal to another trucker that has flashed his lights to let you know that you can pull in. So this is the thank you type of system going to it. Let me keep you in the cab because we'll talk about it, because it has become illegal to do that. They have passed a law, a DOT rule. I'm not sure if DOT things are rules or laws, but there's a DOT rule that says that you can't do that. Why it is, I have no idea in the world. But there is a DOT rule that says that you can't do it, and I think newer trucks do not have this option anymore. But let me take you back outside where the light is better and we can continue this conversation a bit, and I'll tell you why I didn't use it. Okay, just as a little side note, this is about 4 hours later, but so I hope I didn't lose my train of thought. But what I was talking about when we were in the cab is the interrupt switch, and not being installed on newer trucks. At least I don't think it's installed on newer trucks, because it kind of, if I pull up the literature on newer internationals, they don't mention anything about the interrupt switch. So originally what I was going to do is tie these 3 marker lights that I don't know whether is a DOT requirement for trucks. No, it's a DOT requirement for trailers, but it's very kind of unclear whether it pertains to trucks also. But anyways, I was going to tie them 3 lights into the interrupt switch. Well, it turns out I had thought we had found the interrupt switch when the terminals, there's a box back there that I'm tying into. I thought we had found the terminals for the interrupt switch when I was doing the wiring for the lights. But again, if my recollection recalls, it was a lower voltage. So I found some information online. Now again, International uses this thing that's called a bodybuilder program. And what it is they have electronic, like electronic computer modules, ECUs, that do a lot of the work of the electronics on the truck. And to be able to manipulate them, you need a computer program to do that. But let me get back to my point. I had thought we had found it. We had, on a piece of paper, and this was like 3, 4, 5 months ago that we did this, marked a couple of terminals that we were getting the interrupt switch on. Now again, I'm by myself right now. Back then it was me and my grandson were working on it to try and figure out what that interrupt switch, the terminals went to that interrupt switch. And again, because we were getting low voltage on it, I didn't want to tie the main tail lights into the interrupt switch, because apparently it seemed like it was low voltage. It was low voltage. We're getting about 13 volts through a normal circuit on this truck, and that circuit was like down around 10 volts, and the lights were dimmer, and I didn't want to dim the tail lights. So my research lately has been that this interrupt switch works 2 ways. When your lights are on and you hit the interrupt switch, it flashes the lights off whenever you press that button down. As soon as you let it up, the lights go back on. But it also turns out that if your lights are off to begin with and you depress the interrupt switch down, it turns the lights on, so that you can flash the lights on and off by never turning the lights on, just by hitting that interrupt switch if your lights are off to begin with. So now it's starting to make sense why it could be low voltage. But again, being alone, let me just throw this little clip in here right now about, I'm kind of an old school guy as far as electric goes and automobiles, so I don't really understand the modules. If I probably could get it if somebody was able to sit down with me and explain it to me, but I'm kind of old school, a lead in, a lead out. Anyways, I'm not really sure. my kind of theory behind the whole thing, I can figure out what wire feeds the running lights, what wire feeds the turn signals, what wire feeds the brake lights by testing them. But this thing has got me a little stymied, and I'd have to have somebody explain it to me because I'm assuming it's probably going through one of them electronic control modules. How they get one switch to work turning the lights on and off when the lights are on, and the same switch to turn the lights on when the lights are off is kind of a little beyond my scope of figuring it out for myself, knowing that it's probably coming through one of them modules. Now, if I had somebody here from International that works on these bodybuilder modules, electronic modules, and explained it to me, it would probably be another story. But given the fact that I'm kind of by myself and doing this alone, and don't have the software here that would allow me to maybe trace it through the module, I'm kind of stymied by this. So, but I'll figure it out sooner or later, or find somebody that can tell me how to figure it out. It's hard to figure out. I'm assuming that there would probably be 3 terminals if that's the case, so that you would have normally lights on, normally one wire for normally lights on, which would interrupt it, and a wire for lights off, which would actually turn it on. So I'm kind of working on this thing by myself, and I'm not going to get into a long process. So for now, I'm just going to wire these lights into the normal marker light circuit and be done with it. If at some point in time I can figure out what those terminals are the other way around, I might switch those 3 new marker lights out. But enough of that. Let me shut you off, and I'll bring you back for other stuff or when this is done. Okay, so here we are back in the chair and talking to you directly, and not about something, but let me explain a couple of things. First of all, the hoodie thing, I get cold when I can take cold. I can take cold as long as it's a dry cold. I can't stand it when it's like raining and in the upper 30s. It just chills me. Same way with heat. I can't stand, my parents, after my father retired, he moved to Florida. And I couldn't stand Florida in the summertime. That heat and humidity, where like the heat, it's 100 degrees and 100% humidity. It drives me crazy. I can go out to like California where it's 120, 130, but it's that dry heat. And I can take that, but I can't take humidity and heat. But anyways, that's why the hood. I'm cold. There was a lot involved with my wife's passing. And again, I appreciate all the comments from the video that I posted about my wife passing. But anyways, there was a lot of things going on. As far as in the shop, I was discussing in the video where I discussed my wife passing, I was discussing the truck, and you've kind of seen that up until the present time of the electrical system and the lights and stuff like that. And I'm going to keep this video about that. But let me tell you something. I'm going to probably add a couple of clips in here. I had to make some hauls. One of the hauls was made before this happened. I made a haul after she passed. Some people might think that it's ruthless, but you have to understand where she was in life. And if anybody is interested, anybody needs to know anything, my opinion about medical and psychological community, doctors, psychologists, how this has affected her, not affected her, how it has affected me, not affected me, how it affected her end of life. You want me to go into it more, I'd be glad to do it. Just leave a comment, but let's try and leave it for now. So anyways, I made some hauls, and but I'm not going to put it in this video. I'll show maybe some clips of it, but there's things that were discussed about the transmission and how it was going to affect how the transmission, the new transmission, was going to hold up, and what the temperatures of that oil were going to end up being. But I'm going to keep that in another video, but I'll just show you some brief clips here. There was the other thing about how the trailer was going to perform with the shocks versus the bouncing that I was getting before, but let's save that for another video when we can go into detail about it. But I'm still getting comments on that video of the trailer bounce video. As a matter of fact, I got one a couple of days ago, or briefly, and the guy just randomly says, well, you misplaced the load on the trailer, and that's what caused it. All you have to do is reposition the load, and the bounce will go away. That's so far from the truth that it's out of this planet. It's just bizarre, and I'm not going to get into it. It's not bizarre. It's just somebody's opinion. But anyways, I'm going to show you a couple of brief clips. Again, if anybody wants me to critique kind of what happened to my wife and anything like that, you just leave some comments. I don't know whether anybody would be interested or not. Leave some comments. If I have enough comments that people want me to discuss it further, I'd be glad to do it in a video. But let me shut you off here, and I'll bring you back, show you some brief clips, but let's kind of stay on that electrical issue with the International for this video. I've got the truck back in. What I'm going to do is just clean it up. I've got to leave this afternoon. This is fairly early in the morning. It's probably around 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got it in here. I'm just going to wash it. And then this afternoon, I've got to hook it up to my trailer. I've got to go down to Pennsylvania and pick up a generator. It's a generator that I've hauled before, but it's a big generator. It's a 500 kW generator, and it's got a 26-liter Cummins engine attached to it. The generator, now it's an open frame type generator. It's not an enclosed thing where it has sheet metal covers and doors and stuff on it. It's an open frame. So I called AMSOIL and asked them about the oil that I put in there. But again, let me reiterate their position on this thing. They're telling me that I shouldn't have put gear oil in that transmission because the manufacturer of the truck, Chrysler, recommendation is I got you back over here to where I keep the electrical connections, and I just kind of wanted to show you something to make it clear because these female adapters for the bullet connectors are pretty expensive from Truck Light. Go figure. But anyways, these things that I buy in bulk are fairly cheap. Um, if I recall right, they're like 20, 30, 40 cents a piece or something. The ones that I'm getting from Trucklight, now let me tell you that it's got a pigtail on it or a wire connector coming out of it. So it's not like a crimp style type female bullet connection. It's a pigtail with the wire on it. And it has that rubber encasing, and that's kind of why I'm bringing you over here. When I use these things, as you can see from the bullet connector on the end of the truck light adapter, there's a tapered. This thing is like a rubber material. It is a rubber material. It's soft and pliable, and it's tapered at the end. And actually, there's a little ring in there that looks like when it slides into its counterpart, that the coating on the female connector slides over this and it kind of seals that connection off. That's what the issue with using these things are. There's two things. Again, it's a crimp type connector, so you're not really getting a good seal back here. You're crimping it, and I'm putting heat shrink tape over it. But what the problem is when you plug this thing into it, and I won't be able to do this one-handed, but when you plug it into it, the blue part of it only goes up to the end of this, and you're not really getting a good sealed connection. So moisture and the corrosive salt stuff gets in there. It gets in there, and two things happen. Now, what I have done is, it's a live and learn type situation. When I first put them in, I just used the crimp connectors and plugged them in together. Then realized that they were rotting out in no time in the winter time because of the corrosion of the things. So what I started doing is putting dielectric grease in the connection, but again, that's like a short-term temporary type fix to the issue. What you need is a bunch of types of protection. As you can see with these things that come from the factory, they're sealed around the wire. And then you have that overlap situation, and the same is going to be true with the female part of this thing. It's going to be sealed around the wire, and it's going to have the hood that goes over this rubber protrusion to kind of seal it in there. With these things, what happens, even if I use dielectric grease, it still gets in there somewhat, and the dielectric grease doesn't go in all the way. I don't put a lot in there. I don't fill the whole cavity up with dielectric grease. I just put enough in there that I think it's going to seal it off, and what has happened is the corrosion will still get in there, and two things can happen. Sometimes when I pull this apart, this whole sleeve will come right off of it. Either that, or it gets up into the wire and corrodes the wire, and where the wire at the end of where the crimp connection is will break off. So again, I'm going to be happy to have the other style, and I think they'll last a lot longer, but I'll let you know about that. So I finally got those plugs in, and this is what I was talking about. It's got a rubber coated sleeve that goes over it that fits over this. As you can see, they pre-fill them with dielectric grease, by the way, too. But you can see that it fits over that, and it comes out. Now these things, these plastic things, what they'll do is they'll only plug in up to there. And what it does is it just kind of butts against that rubber thing, but it doesn't really form a tight seal to it. And what will happen is water and corrosion will get into that thing, and it'll rot it out. What will happen is it'll corrode out that the receptor in that thing, and when you try and pull it apart, it'll just break off, come out with a plug. Either that or the moisture goes down in through and kind of rots the wire out at the end of it. But anyways, I just thought I'd show it to you. I got these in, and yeah, where'd it go? Here. I got them in. I just couldn't sit around with the other thing, so I came into the shop and wired those 3 lights in. I've still got to bundle up the wires behind it. Again, I use those pigtails that came from Autolite and put them in there. As I showed you in a previous clip, that seal is a lot better for the bullet connector than the plastic bullet connector, female bullet connectors that you get in mass. So it's got that rubber seal on it, and it kind of fits over the male end of the rubber part of the male bullet connector. So much tighter fit. It came with dielectric grease already installed in it. So hopefully it'll all be good.